Good afternoon, guys. So yesterday when we left off on our lesson, I said that I might go through a couple more examples of equivalent fractions. I think that we went through quite a few of them yesterday, and I think that this lesson might take a little bit longer, and I want to make sure that I can get through it for you guys because this is something that you need to do for your assignment. Okay, so this is adding and subtracting fractions. So that's going to be on your assignment. So I want to make sure that I get through this for you guys. Okay. So if you do have any questions about equivalent fractions, again, be sure to send me an email. I don't know how fast I can respond to you, but I will get a hold of you eventually. And just a reminder that you do have a full 2 weeks for your assignments. So there's no real sense of urgency here. You guys have lots of time to work on it. If you have access to YouTube at home, there's a lot of really good resources on there as well that you can try and watch videos. Math Antics, that's a really good I really like that guy. He's really helpful and he explains things in a nice, simple way. If you're looking for extra resources at home, or if you're just bored one day and you think you want to learn some more math on the side, because who doesn't want to learn math in their spare time, right? Yeah, no, I know. But anyway, that's just my suggestion for you guys. So we're going to leave it with yesterday's lesson for equivalent fractions. And if you have questions, let me know, or try and watch some videos on your own. But we're going to get into today's topic, which is adding and subtracting like fractions. Okay, so like fractions are just what we call fractions that have the same denominator. Okay, so again, remember our definitions that the denominator is our bottom number. Okay, so when your denominators are the same, adding and subtracting is really easy. All we need to do is add our top numbers and then the denominator stays the same. Okay, so we're adding our numerators, denominator stays the same. So if you look at this example here, so again, we're dealing with pizza. I know you guys are probably getting sick of seeing it. I know it's making me really hungry, but again, pizza is just a really good example for fractions. Okay. So in this example here, we have 1/4, right? And we know how to make a fraction out of this pizza, right? We've done that for the last 2 days. We're pros at that now. Okay. So we have 1/4 of a pizza and we're adding it to another fourth. Okay. So these two pizzas have the same denominators. They're both divided into 4 equally sized sections. So to solve this question, all we need to do is add our numerators. So we're just going to add 1 plus 1. That's obviously just going to be 2. And then our denominator stays the same. Okay? You don't add the denominators in like fractions. Sorry, I'm having a little hiccup moment here. Okay? So we add the numerators and the denominator stays the same. Okay, this next step that they've done here is they've simplified the fraction. We don't need to worry about that for right now. We'll go over how to do it, but on your assignment, it actually says that you don't have to worry about simplifying them. If you want to, that's great, and I have the answers for both non-simplified and simplified. So in whichever method you want to give me your answer is fine. I'll know that it's right either way. We'll go over how to simplify them, but again, for the assignment, you don't have to, okay? Mathletics might be different. They might make you do it, so we will talk about it, okay? So simplifying a fraction just means getting it to the smallest numbers possible, okay? So in this case, 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2, okay? The way that we do that is we divide 2 and 4, so we divide our numerator and our denominator by the same number, okay? So to go from 2/4 to 1/2, all we need to do is divide both our numerator and our denominator by 2, okay? If we do that, right, 2 divided by 2 is just going to be 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2, okay? So we get that 2/4 is the same as 1/2, okay? And again, that's really easy to see visually here. If you see, both of these look like half of a pizza, okay? The only difference is this one here is divided into 4 sections, so we were calling it 2/4, but 2/4 can be simplified to 1/2, okay? But again, for your written assignment, if you submit the answer to me as 2/4, I won't mark it wrong, okay? You still got the answer right, you just didn't simplify it, okay? So I'm not too worried about that. Let's try another example here. So again, more pizza. I know you're thrilled. Okay. So in this question here, we actually have to make the fractions ourselves. So this is good practice of what we were doing the last 2 lessons. So remember how we make our fractions. So we start with our denominator, okay? So our denominator for this pizza is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Because the denominator just represents the total number of equal sections that we have. So we have 6 equal sections, okay? Let's figure it out for this one here. So in this one here, and again, we should be adding these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this pizza is also divided into 6 equal sections. Okay, so this is going to be a really nice addition question. They have the same denominator. Now we just want to figure out our numerators. Okay, so our numerator is the number of pieces of pizza that we actually have. Okay, so in this one here we have 1, 2. Okay, so we have 2 over 6. And then with the second one here we have just 1. Okay, so that becomes 1 over 6. Okay. So now we have our 2 fractions and we want to add them together. So remember, when we're adding 2 like fractions, so 2 fractions that have the same denominator, all we need to do is add the numerator. Okay, so we're going to add 2 plus 1, and that's going to give us 3 over 6. Okay, remember our denominator doesn't change. Okay, and we can actually confirm our answer because we have a picture of our answer, right? So this is what our fraction, our answer here, should represent. So let's count this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it should be a denominator of 6, which we did. Okay, and then the number of pieces of pizza that we have 1, 2, 3. Okay, so our numerator should be 3, which we have. Okay, so looking at this picture again, you can see that this fraction can probably be simplified, right? Just looking at the pizza and ignoring all of the sections, right? It looks like we have half the pizza, okay? So do you think we could simplify this? Definitely. So the way that we would do that is just by dividing both of our numbers, so both our numerator and our denominator, by the numerator. So if we do that, so if we do 3 divided by 3 and we do 6 divided by 3, okay? 3 divided by 3 is just going to be 1, and 6 divided by 3 is going to be 2. Okay, so we end up that 3 over 6 can be simplified to 1 over 2, which is a half. Okay? All right, so let's try and do some examples without visual aids. Let's just try and do some straight addition. So we have 2 over 3 plus 1 over 3. So we would say 2/3 plus 1/3. Okay? We have the same denominator in both of these fractions, so that means these are like fractions. So that means that solving for this question is really simple. All we have to do is add our numerators, so 2 plus 1, so that's going to be 3. And then our denominator stays the same. Okay, so 3 stays the same. Okay, so our answer to this one is 3 over 3. Now this is another fraction that can be simplified. So remember when we defined proper fractions, we said that a proper fraction is one where the numerator is either smaller or the same size as, smaller or equal to the denominator. Okay, so this is that second case. So in this case, our numerator is equal to our denominator. Okay, so we can simplify it. You can simplify it the same way. So simplify just by dividing both your numerator and your denominator by the numerator. Okay, so if we do that, we end up with 3 divided by 3, which is 1, 3 divided by 3, which is 1 on the bottom. So our answer is 1 over 1, okay? Now, 1 over 1 is the same thing as 1, right? If we think of what our fractions mean, remember that this line here just means divided by, okay? So 1 divided by 1, you can type it into your calculator if you don't believe me, but 1 divided by 1 is just 1, okay? It means that you have 1 out of 1 whole sections. Okay, so you have 1 whole section. So 3 over 3 can be simplified to 1 over 1, and 1 over 1 is just the same thing as 1. So our answer to this question, really, if we simplify it all the way, is just 1. Again, if you give me the answer as 3 over 3, I won't mark it wrong. Okay, unless the question specifically asks you to simplify, then you have to. Okay. Let's try another example here, okay? So this one here, we're adding 1/5 plus 3/5, okay? So these are like fractions. The denominators are the same, right? Both 5s. So we know for our answer, our denominator right away, we can say that's going to be 5, okay? The denominator doesn't change. So to solve this question, all we do is add 1 plus 3. We add our numerators. So 1 plus 3, that's just going to be 4. So our answer to this question is just going to be 4 over 5. Now, as for simplifying, this fraction won't be simplified, okay? If I tried to divide both of our numbers by the numerator, so 4 divided by 4, that would be 1. But then I would have 5 divided by 4 on the bottom, okay? 5 divided by 4 is not such a nice number, okay? If you put that into your calculator, you'll see that 5 divided by 4 is 1.25. Okay, so we would end up with a fraction that looks like this. It would be 1 over 1.25, okay? We never, ever, ever, no exceptions, want to have a fraction that involves a decimal. Okay, never, ever, ever. So if you try and simplify your fraction and you end up with something like this, it's wrong. Okay, you don't ever want a decimal in your fraction. Okay, so in this case, we're not going to simplify this. Our answer is just going to be 4 over 5, so 4/5. Okay, let's try and do another one here. Okay, so we're adding 8/10 plus 6/10. So again, like fractions, they both have the denominator of 10, so we know our answer is going to have a denominator of 10. So remember, that doesn't change. All we want to do is add these two numbers. Okay, so 8 plus 6. 8 plus 6 is going to give us 14. Okay, so our number ends up being 14 over 10. This is what we call an improper fraction. Okay, so that's something that we haven't really talked about before. We've only been dealing with proper fractions. Okay, so improper fractions are fractions where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. Okay, so 14 is bigger than 10. This is an improper fraction. Okay, so if you get an answer like this, you can just leave it like this for now. Okay, we're going to talk about ways to deal with improper fractions and how we can convert them to different forms later on. But as for right now, a question like this you can just leave as an improper fraction. Okay, so you can have a bigger numerator and a smaller denominator. Right? If we do this last example here, this one's going to be another example of an improper fraction. Okay, so we have 9/10 plus 2/10. Our denominator is the same, so we know our answer is going to have 10 on the bottom. And then we just want to add this 9 plus 2. Okay, 9 plus 2 is just going to be 11, so we end up with our answer as 11/10. Okay, again, this is an improper fraction because our numerator is bigger than our denominator. Okay, so we'll just leave it like that. So that's adding. Subtracting is the same method. Okay, when the denominators are the same, all we do is subtract our numerators and then we can simplify the fraction. Okay, so here's an example. So we have 3 over 4 minus 1 over 4. So 3/4 minus 1/4. So since our denominator is the same, right, it's both, they're 4 for both of the fractions, all we do is subtract our numerators. Okay, so you can see in this question here, they just did 3 minus 1, which is 2, and then the denominator stays as 4. Okay, now we saw this example earlier, right? If we go back up to our top question here, we had 2 over 4 as our answer, right? So 2 over 4. And we saw how we can simplify that to 1/2, right? Just by dividing both our numerator and our denominator by 2, so by the numerator, we converted that to 1/2, right? So they just did the same thing here, okay? So they took that 2/4, divided the numerator and the denominator by 2, and you end up with this 1/2. Oh, sorry, you guys didn't see that, okay? All right, here's another example, again with pizza, everybody's favorite, okay? So we start with this one. We have 6 full sections, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so our denominator is 6. Again with this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. So the denominator is 6 for both of these pizzas, okay? Numerator for our pizza on the left is going to be 1, 2, 3, so 3 over 6. And then for this other pizza, it's going to be 1, right? So we have 3/6 subtract 1/6, okay? Denominators are the same, so we leave that and we just move that to our answer, right? So we know that our answer is going to have 6 as the denominator. And when we just subtract 3 minus 1. Okay, so 3 minus 1, that's just going to be 2. Okay, so our answer is 2 over 6. This fraction can be simplified, okay? So all we're going to do is divide the numerator and the denominator by the numerator. Okay, so if we divide both by 2, we end up with 2 divided by 2 on top, which is just 1, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, so 2/6 can be simplified to 1/3. Okay, those are equivalent fractions, right? So remember from our lesson yesterday on equivalent fractions, 2/6 and 1/3 both represent the same amount of pizza, okay, the same amount of area of the shape being taken up. They're just written in different ways, okay? So 1/3 is the simplified version of 2/6. Okay, let's practice some subtraction here. Okay, so we have 9/10 and we're subtracting 5/10. Okay, denominator for both of our fractions is 10, so that stays the same, right? Remember, you don't do anything with the denominator, don't add or subtract it or do anything else. What we're going to do is subtract our numerators. So we have 9 minus 5. Okay, so 9 minus 5, that's going to be 4. So our answer for this one is 4/10. Okay, now we can't divide both of these numbers by 4, but there is a number we can divide them by to simplify it. Okay, so again, if you give me the answer is 4/10, as of right now, I will mark you correct because I'm not too worried about simplifying. But you can divide both of these numbers by something else. Okay, so the greatest common factor between 4 and 10 is 2. Okay, so if we divided both of these numbers by 2, we would get 4 divided by 2, which is 2, and 10 divided by 2, which is 5. Okay, so we can actually simplify this fraction from 4/10 to 2/5. Okay, so simplifying that one was a little bit different. We didn't divide by the numerator because that wouldn't have worked, right? 10 divided by 4 would give us a number with a decimal, so we knew that wouldn't work. But if we tried with other numbers, so 3 wouldn't work, 2 would work. Okay, so 4 divided by 2 gives us 2, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, it can't be simplified any further than that. So either one of these could be our answer, 4/10 or 2/5. Okay, they're both correct. Let's try this one here. Okay, so 3/4 minus 1/4. So our denominator for both of these fractions is 4, so that's going to stay the same, right? Don't do anything with the denominator when you're adding or subtracting. And then all we're going to do is subtract our numerators. So we have 3 minus 1. Okay, 3 minus 1 is just 2. Okay, so we end up with 2/4. Now we've seen this fraction a couple of times in the examples we've done, so we know that this can be simplified, right? And maybe you remember off the top of your head that 2/4 is the same as 1/2, and that's fine. But if you don't remember that, we can also just try and divide, right? So we can divide both of our numbers by our numerator, right? So divide them both by 2. So we'll get 2 divided by 2 on top, which is 1, and then 4 divided by 2 on the bottom, which is 2. Okay, so 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2. So our simplified answer for this problem is 1/2. Let's try another example here. So this one here, we have 13/14 minus 7/14. Okay, so again, we have those like denominators. These are like fractions. Our denominator won't change. We don't do anything with it. It just stays as 14. And then we want to subtract our numerators. So we have 13 minus 7. So 13 minus 7, that's going to be 6. Okay. Now, if we try and simplify this fraction, if we try to divide both of our numbers by the numerator, it's not going to work. Okay. If we try and do that, so if we divide both of these by 6, we'll get 1/14 divided by 6, which is going to be not such a nice number. 14 divided by 6 is actually a really ugly number. It's 2.3333, etc. It goes on forever, right? And remember what we said earlier, you never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, want a decimal in your fraction. Okay, so this obviously can't be right. Okay, so dividing by 6 didn't work. Let's go backwards. So what about 6 divided by 5? Okay, well, I know that's not going to divide nicely. 6 divided by 4, I know that's also not going to be divided nicely. Okay, 6 divided by 3, so 6 divided by 3, that's nice, right? That gives me 2. But if I do 14 divided by 3, I'll get another really ugly number, okay? So I get 4.66666, so a repeating number, okay? So that's not going to work. What about 6 and 14 divided by 2? So if I do 6 divided by 2, and I do 14 divided by 2, okay? this has gotten kind of messy, okay? But 6 divided by 2 on top, that's going to give me 3. And then 14 divided by 2 on the bottom is going to give me 7. Okay? I can't simplify that any further, right? So the greatest common factor between 6 and 14 was 2. So if I divided both of those numbers by 2, I get my answer as 3/7. Okay, so that's just the simplified version of 6/14. So either of those answers would be correct unless the question is specifically asking you to simplify, in which case this would be your answer, okay? For your written assignment for this week, it doesn't matter, okay? Mathletics might ask you to simplify. Again, I'm hoping that it doesn't. I'm going to try and choose assignments that don't make you simplify, but if they do, you guys should be able to sort of figure that out, okay? But for the assignment, you can just leave it as an improper fraction, or you can just leave it as a non-simplified fraction. Okay, let's do this last example here. So this one is 4/6 minus 2/6. Okay, so our bottom number is 6, right? Our denominator is 6, so that's not going to change. You don't do anything with the denominator. And all we want to do is subtract our numerators. So 4 minus 2, that's nice, easy math. That's just going to be 2. This fraction is a really nice one to simplify because we can divide both of our numbers by our numerator. So if we do that, we end up with 2 divided by 2 on top, which is just 1. And then 6 divided by 2 on the bottom, which is going to give us 3. Okay, so our answer to this question, it could be either 2/6 or 1/3 because those are equivalent fractions, right? 1/3 is just the simplified version of 2/6. Okay, now that's how we solve for fractions that have like denominators, okay? There is a couple of questions, or I should say there are a couple of questions on your assignment that involve adding and subtracting fractions that have different denominators, okay? So I'm not going to have a lesson for you guys on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a YouTube video for you tomorrow that explains how to do that, okay? So that's going to be sort of a glimpse into the next couple of things that we're going to talk about when we get back from reading week. And hopefully that YouTube video will help you guys with your assignment, okay? Don't stress too much about those questions. If when I'm marking the assignments, I see that a lot of you struggled, okay, I'm going to know that the YouTube video wasn't enough information, right? It wasn't enough practice for you guys. And in that case, I'll just count those questions as bonus marks or whatever, so they won't affect your mark at all, okay? But definitely try them. And definitely come to class tomorrow. I know a lot of you might be planning to leave early for the Thanksgiving weekend and the reading week. Okay, so that's fine. All you're going to miss is the YouTube video, but it is really going to help you with your assignment. Okay, so I'll post it under our course notes. I'll add it to the top of this here. I'll probably put it right here. I'll add that afterwards. Okay. So if you're bored over the weekend or want to escape your family a little bit over Thanksgiving, you can go to your room and watch this YouTube video, okay? And it will help with your assignment, right? Other than that, everything else on your assignment you should be able to do, right? The first couple of pages were those questions that we did the first lesson. So, shading in shapes to represent fractions, being given a fraction, and then that's what I just said, right? Shading in shapes to represent fractions. Okay, creating fractions from shapes. And then the adding and subtracting with like denominators. Okay, all of that you guys shouldn't have problems with. And then tomorrow we'll watch that video and then you guys will have a week off. Okay, so again, any questions, send me an email. Other than that, video tomorrow, and you guys have a great long weekend and a great reading week, and we'll do a little refresher on all of this stuff that we've went over when we all get back on the Monday after reading week.